So we're continuing our flight training leadership interview series, and today I have the pleasure to speak with Ian Calvert, CEO of Ardmore Flying School. Ardmore Flying School is one of the leading flight schools in New Zealand. They have a fleet of 18 aircraft, and they're training both domestic New Zealand students as well as international students from most countries in Southeast Asia and many other regions of the world. Their focus is really on high quality integrated pilot training, especially for institutional customers. And it's really a pleasure to have Ian with us today and kind of share more information about their organization, the current status of their operations, any effects that they have seen in this challenging time, and share with us a bit his future outlook, what he thinks both for Ardmore Flying School and for the industry. Welcome, Ian. Good to have you with us. And please tell us a bit more about Ardmore Flying School.
Well, thank you for having me. Ardmore's Flying School, as you say, is one of the biggest in New Zealand. Been around a very long time, since 1961, in fact, with the current owner owning it for the last 42 years. So it's trained a lot of pilots over the years and is well established and well known. We have graduate pilots flying worldwide, particularly around, obviously, New Zealand and Australia, but also all through Asia and in Europe. And the number of that drop back in and see us and talk about their experience with us and then their airline experiences is always refreshing and welcome. As you say, we've got 18 aircraft, 2 twin-engine aircraft, the rest are Cessna 172 singles, with a variety of avionics and fit out. And we've about 165 students, full-time students in training at the present time, so reasonably busy. At that, we do integrated training for airline pilot outcomes, right up from ab initio right through to multi-crew integration course using a fixed-base A320 type simulator. So we cover all aspects of that training, using some senior airline ex-training captains as part of our team in the airline preparation course towards the end of the training to get the students ready for their integration into the airline. And that course has proven to be very successful up until now. Our students come from all over Southeast Asia. We have cadets from Vietnam who have been coming for us for quite some time. We have quite a few from China, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Papua New Guinea, Pacific Islands, and from various European countries as well. So we have a really good pastoral care and accommodation set up so that all of those students not only get to train and mix well, their English improves, they get to mix with other cultures while they're training. So our training is while it's obviously to get a pilot license and be ready for an airline, also encompasses those professional qualities and aspects that are so critical for a multi-crew environment, particularly when they're operating in various parts of the world.
So we're from your website, I've actually seen, just so this is one of the most interesting things that I find about Ardmore Flying School, is that actually you already have more than 21,000 graduates to date. You know, I think that's something which only very few schools around the world can really say.
Yes, we certainly have trained a lot of pilots, as I said, and we keep track, not of all of them, unfortunately, but we are very lucky, and a lot of them come back to us and say where they've been and what they've done and what their Ardmore experience and enable them to do.
How I'm talking about just now, before we move on to your current status of your operation, how has the last year been for you? Because I know for a lot of the industry, it was almost kind of like a record year. We saw record growth in the airlines and even in the flight training industry. So just pre-COVID, can you give us a bit more information about any recent announcement or how things were for you?
Yes, well, we were no different. We'd gone through a period of change of management and a change of how we operate, which changed the culture of the company into a more professional airline-focused training organisation, and that in itself is challenging. However, we went from about 90 students to now 165, so we did grow a lot and quite quickly. In that time, we bought the A320 fixed base simulator, so that enhanced our end of training cycle abilities. We actually reduced other areas of the operation. We ceased technician training and rotary training to focus on the airline pilot training, because that growth was happening so quickly that we needed the resources in classrooms and space and aircraft and all of those to focus on that. And it enabled us to introduce some student management systems and safety management systems to ensure that we not only offered really good training, but actually did it safely and at a pretty high standard that we would expect that our customers want.
Yeah, at least I know from our database and from my network that New Zealand is definitely known. It's one of the global popular pilot training destinations. It's known for high quality training, and it's also quite popular with airlines in Asia and around the world for airline ab initio pilot training programs. So moving from kind of that record time a few months ago to the challenges that we're currently facing now. So can you just tell us a bit more about the status of your operations, any effects that you've seen, policies you've implemented? I've read in the news a couple of days ago that actually New Zealand is one of the countries actually doing very well in terms of containment of the current virus that there is.
Yes, there's to say that the COVID-19 has had a dramatic effect. Our country went into a total lockdown on the 23rd of March or 25th of March, which meant ceasing all operations, including ground school and everything else. And we had 2 days notice, so it was a very short notice period to prepare for that. So for us, that was quite dramatic. We had been looking at a company restructure anyway to better cope with what we foresaw as a potential issue with the COVID-19 and the effect on the world's aviation. And so we shifted to online learning for a lot of our students. So we were able to continue some ground courses and mass briefings and things like that. And we went through a company restructure, which reshaped our management team and some of our operational team. Unfortunately, it meant reduced staff numbers. But in doing so, it has placed our company to be more efficient. So we have had some positive outcome from COVID-19, and it's made us look at our operation in a different way. And out of that has come some financial efficiencies, some other operational efficiencies. At the moment, we're under what our government has as alert level 3, which we still cannot do any practical flight training, although we have begun simulator training for IFR to a limited degree, which is some help. We're expecting to go to alert level 2 next week. That's our hope, and I'm part of a working group and to advise the government to do that. Once we at alert level 2, given risk mitigation measures, we will be able to operate at near capacity, probably not quite at 100%, but certainly at near capacity in flight training again. We're fortunate in that we've not had any students withdraw. So all the international students that were in New Zealand the 25th of March are still here and still want to finish their training. So they're desperate to get flying. So now we just have to compress all that flying in the next few months instead of having a couple of extra months to do it. And we're coming into winter. So there'll be some challenges around that. And interestingly enough, we've had an increase in applications from overseas during this period. So we still have quite a pipeline of students wanting to come and train at Ardmore from all over the world, particularly Southeast Asia. But that will be determined by the government's border controls and when they are relaxed. So we're at their mercy at the moment. So at the moment we have staff, particularly instructors, doing as much ground school as they can via Zoom and other methods as much as possible. But other staff basically on a reduced salary, just waiting for us to be able to begin operations again, hopefully next week. And our business will be changed by that. We will be using Zoom, for example, a lot more than we used to in the past, and probably not have everyone back in the office until we're down at the very lowest alert level 1, or when they're lifted altogether.
Yeah, I think what you've just said, that is really a really good kind of positive message to the industry as well, that even during this lockdown period, you've actually seen an increase, or you've seen plenty of applications of international students still wanting to come to you, and having this pipeline. So I think that is really good to hear, because I know a lot of people are worried that will there still be the same demand from aspiring pilots for pilot training. Also, what I saw using our own platform is that usually in the first week of when a lockdown was introduced in the different countries, you can see, or at least this is what we saw. We saw the interest, website traffic and registrations decrease, because I'm guessing for the first week, a lot of people were just at home, maybe thinking about, okay, how is this going to affect them, watching Netflix. But then, as the lockdown continued on, a lot of people also started researching, okay, what are all the different career options that they have. So I think it's really just fantastic to hear that you have a lot of applicants who are still applying to you. Are there, just operationally speaking, are there anything specifically in your kind of mitigation plan, safety and mitigation plan, that you've implemented from an operational perspective for the flight training phase?
Yes, we have. I mean, we've been maintaining the aircraft, for instance. We've been given approval to do maintenance flights with them to keep the engines ticking over and to meet the manufacturer's requirements from an operational engine point of view, to keep the aircraft safe and ready to fly straight away.
Okay.
We will be doing, we're doing a lot of contact tracing, so students having their mobile phones with their location on, so that we can see where they've been and people have contacted and been with. When they come in, limited numbers coming into the school at any one time, having to sign in, sign out, and see who they're visiting. Any non-essential staff are working from home still, anyone that can do that. So most of the administrative staff are working from home and will continue to do so. Sanitisation, wipes, things like that. Potentially masks in the aircraft, although that will depend on what the government requires more than anything. But sanitizer to wipe down the aircraft, all the control surfaces that are touched by someone before and after flight. And temperature checks when they come into the building. So we've got a contactless temperature check as well. So with all of those mitigating factors, and only having the instructor and the student come in for the flight, do the flight and go away again, so there's no one sitting around waiting and things like that. And our systems allow us to do the scheduling and signing in and out of the aircraft remotely, so we can have quite a reduced number of people in the building at any one time, and still funnel students through quite quickly. So those are some of the factors that we're using. Yeah.
Just to I just have one point. You mentioned this contact tracing. So the contact tracing, is that you internally, like the school actually doing it, or is that just local authority doing it?
We're required to do it by the government and the educational agencies, so that if a student were to contract COVID-19, and ideally in their own life, in their personal life, which are in our accommodations so we manage them anyway.
Yeah.
When they last went to the supermarket, or when did they go out shopping, if they can go to the supermarket and that sort of thing, and who they are housed with and all of that sort of thing, to do that from a government point of view, but we're doing it for ourselves as well, so that if we were unlucky enough to have a student or an instructor for that matter be infected, we can actually then isolate exactly who they saw, exactly when they were there, and make sure that we then get all those people tested, and we can do a deep clean of any areas that they might have been in.
Wow, that is that is really interesting for me to hear. I'm sure a lot of other flight schools will be looking at that as well, if they're already not if they're not already doing it, because I think in a lot of countries, specifically in Asia, flight schools yet are not allowed to operate at all, and so certainly maybe they can use that. Insights that insight that you've just shared, or that policy, to also set up contact tracing teams within the organization, which just keep track of all the students, especially if they don't have on-site accommodations. So let me ask you the question of looking into the crystal ball. So what do you think is the future outlook? What is your prediction of the future outlook, not only for Ardmore Flying School, but also for the industry?
I'm an optimist by nature, but I do have a relatively positive view. I think the next 3 to 6 months will be the toughest. We'll keep even border openings are made possible. But I think overall, this is really just an industry reset, because we were so short of pilots before that actually what's happened is that the aviation industry has shrunk to match what really is available. Maybe a little bit more than what's available in the short term, but I think relatively quickly, as we see domestic markets like China's already flying a lot more domestically and things like that, as those markets open up, that will quickly match the number of pilots available, which before was a shortage, now will be just right. But I think within the pilot training time, 18 months' time, if someone started training in the next month or so, that in 18 months' time, that in the industry in general worldwide would have then started on the upward slope back to more activity, where pre-COVID-19 we were short of pilots.
Yeah.
So I think it gives us an opportunity, if we market this right and manage it right by mitigating the risk of COVID-19. I think New Zealand's well placed. Low numbers and our government strong stance and our border controls and things like that. I think New Zealand in itself becomes a very safe place to send a pilot to train. I think that in that 18, 19, 20 month period, the industry will then be saying, actually, we've used all the pilots that we were made redundant, and a lot of retired. We actually need pilots now. And in my experience in all my years, that airlines are terrible at waiting until they need them tomorrow to then go out and seek a new pilot. Whereas I think we have an opportunity to work with the industry as a whole and say, 18 months' time, it's going to be different to what it is today. And so now talk to us about pilot training. Now's the time to talk to schools like ours and say, in 18 months' time, we think we're going to need this number of pilots. Now, whether they're a cadetship or whether it's just an intention, there's never anything sure in aviation until you're actually sitting in the cockpit, you're not actually doing it. So my view is that it's an opportunity for the industry as a whole worldwide to reset and actually get ahead of the game, rather than always be in catch-up mode and in panic mode, trying to train pilots more quickly for cheaper and cheaper, as and run the risk of a safety risk. We've got an opportunity to do it properly.
Yeah. I think I actually fully agree with you, and based on my opinion or my knowledge in the data that I've gathered, as I mentioned earlier, New Zealand is definitely always an option which aspiring pilots from all over the world, as well as airlines, should definitely consider, due to the high quality of training, but also all of the safety factors that you've mentioned as well now, especially in a COVID or post-COVID scenario. Actually, yesterday, one of the leading people in the flight training industry in India, he made a very interesting point to me, and he said, when we're talking about demand for flight training post-COVID, because that is the big question right now. How is the general public going to fly as much as before? And he said in India, what he's thinking, yes, there might be some short-term pain, but actually, COVID is just going to encourage people to move even more away from travel by trains to an aircraft, because an aircraft is a lot safer from a health and a safety aspect now in India than people using the train to go from city by city. So actually, when he made that suggestion, just in India, he said it might be that a huge part of the population that still was going before by train travel will now pay an extra let's say $50 and now use air travel as well. So I think it is still as we're saying, it is still an unknown, but the airline industry will certainly recover. And there's a lot of factors which will support a quick recovery, and they should definitely consider New Zealand as an option for their ab initio pilot training. Finishing off, are there any specific stakeholders that Ardmore or yourself would like to connect with, both now and then also moving ahead, to kind of work with you, support you in your future growth strategy or future operations?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, we've as a company and as a board, we've been looking at post-COVID. Where do we go? What's the company going to look like? And there's a couple of areas really that are interesting to us. One is aircraft. I mean, I think having enough aircraft or flight training aircraft and of a suitable quality that we can afford. I mean, at the end of the day, it's flight training is unfortunately at the lower end of the returns. So we need to be able to have economic aircraft to operate, but suitable ones for airline training, as opposed to some of the lightweight models that are available now are great for cheap operation, but maybe not quite so suitable for airline-specific training or the techniques required. And then the other one is I guess capital, money, because we believe that we certainly have the ability on the airfield and capacity and a team and a management structure to expand even further, and that was certainly our intention pre-COVID. So, looking at in capital investment to be able to afford to do that quickly is also something. It's interesting whether that is an option moving forward, whether other people see aviation as too high a risk, which they tend to do. But I think actually now's the time, if ever anyone's going to do that, it's a good time to do it. But new buildings or an updated some updated multi-engine simulators and things like that, that for the capital to be able to do it quickly is actually probably one of the things that we're interested in, as well as any airline, of course. That's one thing. We've got the ability and the capacity to train even more than what we've got now. So that's the path that we're following. So we're interested in putting out and responding to any proposals that may come forward.
Okay. Well, certainly from my side, I can say there's a lot of interest in consolidation in the industry right now, in engaging in mergers and acquisition activity, especially over the past 2 weeks. Again, it has reactivated as more and more countries are coming out of lockdown, and at least there's some visibility and a bit less uncertainty than there was before. So if anyone would like to reach out to Ian, his profile link will be in the description as well. So please do. Thank you for sharing your insights, Ian. I think especially that you're doing this contact tracing in-house is something which I think maybe quite a few schools, if they haven't already done so, will most probably be looking to set that up to also have that in their mitigation plan. And yeah, I really wish you the best of luck. I wish that New Zealand hopefully moves to the lower alert level and that you get to restart operations quite quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.